Welcome to Unfiltered Business Podcast, the show that funnels in all the good and all the bad of what it takes to run a business. I'm your show host, Corey Faulkner, and today we got a good show for you. Today we got Josh McGinty, which is owner of Southern Rehab Sports Medicine here in LaGrange, Georgia, a very successful physical therapy practice. Welcome, Josh.
Good to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you on the show, man. Yeah. So like what we talked about before we started, what we dive into on this podcast is the overall business aspect of things, of how you got started, where the business is at now versus where it was at 10 years ago, and the ups and downs and all. So just kind of let's talk about your story, man. How in the world did you get started into physical therapy? What led you down that path?
My dad was a high school football coach. I was around athletics my whole life, but I knew I wanted to stay around athletics, but I didn't want to be a coach. So I got into athletic training. So I did that at the University of Alabama, and that's a 3.5-year program. And probably year 2, I realized that I didn't want to do that forever. I didn't want to have to show up on a Sunday morning because the basketball coach was mad at the team and, be on the football field Friday nights till 11 o'clock forever. So I decided to go to PT school. So, I still love athletic training, and I'm an athletic trainer also, but I don't do that as much anymore. But then I went directly into PT school and at UAB in Birmingham. And then my last clinical for school was here in LaGrange at that time it was called Southern Therapy Services. And I'd taken a job in Opelika, Alabama, on a Friday. I'd accepted a position there, but I was in this clinical here, and I just had this over the weekend. I just had this feeling of dread, and I'd made the wrong decision. And Lori Jeter was my CI, and now she's my business partner. Our relationship, our interaction then, the feel I got from the clinic. She was running the clinic then, and had for years. Something just told me that I need to rethink that. And so Monday, I called the guy in Opelika, and I said, "Hey, sorry what I told you Friday, but I think I've changed my mind." And then, that afternoon I told Lori that I was going to accept the position that they had offered there. And that was probably one of the better decisions I've ever made because it's worked out really well. That was 2007. And then about a year and a half of working there, some things led to the thought of, hey, why don't we buy this one clinic from an existing business that had, I forgot, they had 6 or 7 other clinics, and this one kind of felt like the redheaded stepchild and, got no love from the bigger group. And so it took me a while to kind of turn her onto that because she had been a company woman for, I forgot, 15 or 16 years at that point.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't even cross her mind to own a business. And so it took me about 6 months. I got her on board. And so in 2009, we bought the existing practice and formed Southern Rehab and Sports Medicine. So that's kind of our origin story there. But it was pretty quick out of school. I'm glad. It was awesome, but it was pretty nerve-wracking. I came home the first day I floated that idea to her at work, and I told my wife, I said, well, something awesome is going to happen or I'm going to get fired tomorrow. So we'll just see.
Yeah. No, that's kind of the way business works, man, is once you feel like you've headed down that right path, risk becomes like a, set aside, and we're just going to do it all or we're not going to do anything at all.
Right.
But, and once you get that feel, you get that inside feel, this is the path for me. And you're going to do what you can to make it work out. And it has worked out for you all.
Yeah.
Yeah, right now you got, 4 clinics?
4
different
clinics,
locations?
yeah. We're in LaGrange, Columbus, Newnan, and Fayetteville.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's good. And I'm sure there's some struggles along the way since the day you started.
Yeah, it got real when the offer to buy the clinic was accepted, and then we had to go figure out how to fund that, borrowing money, and we just bought a house, and now you're signing your house onto the loan, and Lori put up some family land against it that, that's nerve-wracking at first. And then the biggest issue when we very first started is that Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Georgia, which is the largest private payer to our business, usually would take 45 to 60 days to become in network. And we started 2 months before we made the transition. 6 months into our new business, they still hadn't put us in network. So for the first 6 months, I can't tell you how many patients we lost because we were not in network with Blue Cross. That was crazy. I was on the phone every other day trying to figure out what was going on, and I think the eventual thing was that it sat on a lady's desk who was out on maternity leave, and nobody checked our application. That one little snag. That probably month 3 I mean, we were laying awake at night thinking about payroll the next day. That was pretty tough.
Sure.
Those days were long, but luckily we've not been in that position for a long time. We've done slow, steady growth. Other than that first acquisition, everything else has been kind of thought out, taking our time, made sure we had the financial backing before we made a move. So it's been good.
Yeah, and that's the thing, especially in healthcare in general overall, is there's so many variables that you have to overcome. For one, insurance. Are you in network? Are you not in network? Is the patients you see, do they even have insurance? Are they cash pay or whatever, And so there's a lot of things that takes place into healthcare overall, especially physical therapy, like telehealth. When COVID hit, that was a huge thing that took place, and everybody started jumping on that bandwagon. You offer telehealth at the moment?
We are not doing it currently. We did do it during COVID. I mean, everybody had to do it for about a 6-month period there. A lot of practices really incorporated it larger into their practice. We did not. I mean, we made it available, and we did quite a few for probably at least a 3-month period. Medicare changed some rules and laws to where there's a code where you can still do it now with Medicare beneficiaries. But we just, it's a little different depending on what specialty you're in. We're in orthopedics, so, people have had surgery. They require our hands on them a lot. I mean, we can show them some stretches or assess them on the video, but, my preference is in person, the touch in the field.
Certainly.
But it's still something we could offer, but I think in our industry, it's really cooled off. I mean, obviously during COVID, it became hot and everybody started doing it. But I think it's really slowed down the telehealth part. But it's still an option in the physical therapy world for sure, and medicine for sure now with all the apps and doc on demand, those kind of things.
Yeah, and that's the thing with physical therapy overall is, you got to be pretty much in a good physical condition yourself. It's a very demanding job physically. With patients, have surgeries or whatever they need help with. It takes a lot on you guys, especially on your feet all day long, is working with those patients. And that's, a lot of people don't understand that as what it takes for you all as the therapist to go through to make sure you stay in good health and provide good service.
Yeah. We try to make it one of those practice what you preach type things.
That's right.
You don't want your physical therapist to be 350 pounds telling you what you should and should not be doing,
Yeah. That's right. So what are some unique things that Southern Rehab offers to patients?
We consider ourselves the orthopedic experts in this field, in this area. I mean, we have some therapists, myself included, that are orthopedic certified specialists. So they're just like medicine. There are board certifications in physical therapy. We're a orthopedic residency site for Emory University. So we kind of take pride on having that specialty in orthopedics and sports medicine. Myself, an athletic trainer. We've had on and off over the years athletic trainers on staff also to kind of booster that sports medicine field. Dry needling has become huge in the last, 8 or 10 years in physical therapy. I think I was the first person in LaGrange for sure, and almost the first person in Columbus to be doing dry needling 8 or 9 years ago. Now every company has, dry needling. In the state of Georgia, you have to take some continuing education courses, but, like I said, most new grads are getting a little bit of that in school, then they complete that education. But that's a big, powerful tool. It's not a cure-all. It's what I tell people. It doesn't fix everything, but it is. There's some states that you can't dry needle still, weirdly, 1 or 2 for some reason. I think it's an acupuncture board fight type thing like in Florida. But, I've been doing it for so long. If I practiced physical therapy and couldn't dry needle, it would drive me nuts. I mean, to know that I have such a tool right there that I just can't use. We do vestibular rehab, which is pretty cool. It's really gained a lot of traction. I mean, there are physical therapy clinics now set up all over the country, and that's all they do. Just vestibular rehab. I mean, dizziness, vertigo, positional vertigo, hypofunction. When people have concussion, post-concussion syndrome. Veterans have concussions and brain injuries in Iraq and Afghanistan and overseas. I mean, they deal with these things for years. Well, there are ways to improve that. People don't understand that. Just try to take a medication. Well, there's balance training. There's positional things that people can do. I've worked in a clinic in Kentucky, and now I'm seeing it now that we've all become vestibular specialists. I mean, this lady would have people come in throwing up in the trash can. Their husbands are carrying them. They can't even stand up straight. She could do some positional techniques to kind of realign some, for lack of a better term, crystals in their ear. They walk out fine and smiling 20 minutes later. I mean, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So vestibular rehab's a big thing that we do. We've had some women's health, pelvic floor specialists over the years where we want to get back into that. That's a huge need in these communities for that. We do aquatic therapy at all our locations, which there's a little aquatic therapy around, but not much. You know, that can be super beneficial to people that have multiple injuries or people that, you know, if they can't stand for 4 or 5 minutes without severe back pain or knee pain, they can get in the water and work for an hour. And then hopefully, you know, with some time, that'll carry over into their daily lives. Mm-hmm. And then, again, we're general outpatient orthopedics and sports medicine.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a tremendous amount of training, continuous training that goes into being a physical therapist.
Yeah.
And not to mention, along with running the business itself.
Yeah. You can, I got a little alphabet soup behind my name, but, you know, pay for it all and take all these tests. But, you know, the physical therapy profession changed to a doctorate. My class was the first class at UAB to be approved for the DPT. Mm-hmm. It was a master's prior to that. But you can take 100 courses with certifications after that to specialize or, you know, increase your knowledge in a certain area. And then the board certification, I think, is a really big deal. And I think the physical therapy profession as a whole should push that more because, you know, as a doctor, you don't say I'm a doctor. You say I'm a cardiologist, mm-hmm. I'm a urologist, mm-hmm. I'm a radiologist, right? Well, you tell somebody you're a physical therapist, well, they have a little picture in their mind, but there's a lot of difference between a physical therapist that works in a nursing home and a physical therapist that works at a sports medicine clinic.
That's right.
Right? I mean, there's a huge difference. So I'm a big fan of the board certifications in physical therapy, and I hope that continues to gain traction and become more and more popular within the field, but then people outside the field understand what that means, mm-hmm. too.
Yeah, and that's good because, I mean, like you said, a lot of people don't understand the difference between a physical therapist versus a physical therapist in a nursing home. And there's going to become a time in life where everybody needs a physical therapist, one way or another. And you know, you may know my mom passed away 5 weeks ago. And I truly believe to this day, if she would have had physical therapy for a good extensive amount of time, she'd still be with us today.
Yeah. I mean, you know, there's phrases in our industry and we learn in school, movement is medicine.
That's right.
Right? We are made to move, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You get old, you get sick, you go down in the bed for weeks, your health is going to decline if you don't get up as soon as you can. I mean, you know, they do these surgeries, what they want you to do, these doctors now, they realize that they want you out of bed as soon as you can. Mm-hmm. Blood clots, you know, your kidney function, all these other things. Movement is medicine. You know, today's technology in the world, we're all sitting, we're at the desk, you know, we're not meant to do that.
Mm-hmm.
We're meant to be up, moving around, working out. That keeps us healthy, not just our musculoskeletal system, but all our systems.
Mm-hmm. And that's right. You know, my mom, she was bedridden for pretty much, last time she come down here was, I think, not this past Thanksgiving, the Thanksgiving before. And no, I take that back. My daughter's wedding back last May, she came down, and she could barely walk then, but as soon as she went back home, you know, from South Carolina, mm-hmm. pretty much bedridden since. And so she passed away of NASH, non-alcoholic cirrhosis of the liver. Mm-hmm. So her being bedridden and never being able to move much,
systems just shut down.
It just shut down.
Yep.
Shut down. But if she had had physical therapy, man, I truly believe it to the bottom, you know, my whole heart, that if she would have had it, she'd still be with us today.
Yeah.
Because it would have prolonged her life and got her up and moving in the way she needs to move.
Yep. And that's a big change in our industry now. You know, insurance companies have come to realize this, right? So, you know, we got referrals when I first started. Obviously, you had an injury, you come in, physical therapy, you have a surgery, you do physical therapy. But it was, you know, our largest referral source, still to this day, but not as much, are orthopedic doctors, right? They see that injury, they treat that injury, they send you to physical therapy. Well, now we get physical therapy referrals from every medical profession. Mm-hmm. Some of it is that they're getting a little more training in school. Hey, this is what physical therapy is. These are the benefits. Some of it is insurance dictated. But the insurance is playing the numbers game. They're there to make money.
That's right.
They realize that you are going to be more healthy. You're going to have to do less testing. You might even not have a surgery if they can pay a little money for physical therapy mm-hmm. versus $1,000 for an MRI that mm-hmm. doesn't fix you.
That's right.
And so our referrals from the broad base of medical practitioners has gone up. You know, family practice, internal medicine, all these different specialties that, you know, I didn't see referrals from back then. We're getting it now. And then, you know, the general population is coming around to that slower than I would like, but the general population itself now realizes, hey, why don't I just start with therapy when my hamstring hurts or my low back hurts. Why do I have to go to a doctor and take medication and do tests and when he's just going to send me to physical therapy, especially people that have been through that routine once or twice and understand that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What does Southern Rehab do different than other practices to become, as advanced and successful as you all are and having the clinics that you've got? So what are some things that y'all do a little different?
I think it falls back to the specialties part. Pretty much every new therapist we've hired in the last 5 years, they're encouraged to pick a specialty area, and we will, if you want to call it a sign-on bonus, if you want to call it their first year continuing education package, we encourage and almost get them to pick during their interview what specialty they want to go in. They want to be a dry needling, they want to do pelvic floor, they want to do vestibular. So right off the bat, it's not just you're going to come in and work for a year or two and just learn the basics. We want you to start that right away, but we will also want you to go right into a specialty. So I think every one of our therapists has a specialty and is looking to progress that into another. Another thing is we're a very busy outpatient practice, but we don't overschedule. We try to make sure that your physical therapist has time to sit with you. Your physical therapist does not have 2, 3, 4 patients there at once just telling you to do a stretch on the table, tell this person to do a stretch over there, screaming at somebody across the room, do another stretch. We like to spend that one-on-one time with you. We can't spend an hour and a half with every patient in today's reimbursement world, but we have our schedule just enough that you get that individualized care with your patient. So we have patients all the time that give us feedback from other places, and they say, well, I was in there with one therapist and 5 other people, and I just felt like, I was being left alone, and every time I went, I did the same thing. Well, that's the thing that we teach all our new therapists. There's no reason for you to do the same exercise every time someone comes in. They can do this stuff at home. Mm-hmm. They're coming to see you for specialty treatment every time they walk in the door. So that's a little bit of the things that we do different. Our company motto, we put the patient first, the business part comes second. But if we do a great job with the patient care, we're going to have a good business on the back end.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
That's easy to say. And then, if we're talking about the business, there's a lot more to that. But our general company motto is that if we make sure the patient's happy and getting healthy, and or at least we've done our best job to try to make them better, the business part will come secondary and be good too.
That's certainly right, yeah. So over the years, what are some of the struggles that Southern Rehab has had, but has, of course, overcame, and what kind of took place to overcome those struggles?
Some of it in physical therapy, at UAB, in all physical therapy schools, you may have one class where you talk 1 week about business stuff, right? They say, make a budget for a clinic, and if you were to build a new clinic, what equipment would you want? Basically, you turn that project in, that's your business background. Mm-hmm. So we don't have that. So it's a trial by fire. We made some errors in the beginning. One thing, we bought an existing practice, so we kind of have a little bit of a model kind of laid out in front of us that we could kind of follow, some templates that we could use. We've had some insurance issues. We've had some hard knocks in that, some contracting that we've just kind of had to learn on the fly. Lori and I have both treated patients 40 hours a week and ran the business. We're up to 28 employees now. Lori still does payroll. She does all our HR, health insurance stuff. I do all the recruitment, physical therapists, staffing in the clinics. I do some mentoring. I've luckily been able to cut down some of my clinic time lately, but it's trial by fire. A lot of times we'll make a mistake and learn from it. Luckily, we've never made really any, just bad mistakes, serious mistakes with money or something. We've never had to go back since probably the first loan. We've never really had to go back and borrow any money, which has been a blessing. Even in the slow times, we've had some staff turnover that has hurt. We've had some new therapists come in, get them trained up, and then they leave. That's not been good. We've had situations where, we had a busy clinic, and and especially in our Columbus location, that's a very big military town. So we'll get a military spouse, come in, get them trained up. They'll be doing great, and then her spouse will get transferred. So then we have a full clinic and nobody to work there, so that's when, I'll have to go down there and work extra hard for a while until we can grab another, great physical therapist and kind of fill them in, get them trained up. But from the business end, I think it's just trial and error. It's learning as we go. We've really had some good people in the background. We've got a lawyer in town who's always there for us. That's helped us do anything we need and been, always had great advice. Our biggest asset, when we first started, a local doctor suggested that we use his guy, which is a CPA company. But they're out of Dalton, and we thought, well, out of Dalton, why would you use somebody not local? But that's probably been the best decision we've ever made. I mean, he employs CPAs. He's not a CPA, but he's really our business advisor. So any big business question, decision, we always run by him. He's always there to help. He's on straight and narrow, so he doesn't let us get into any gray zones, which is probably good. But that's probably been our biggest asset when it comes to any decisions on finances and, if we open a new clinic, all the things we need to think about. I mean, he doesn't, we know our industry, we know the referrals, we know the staffing, we know that, but he really helps us look at the financial aspect, kind of planning and that kind of thing. So he's probably been that was the best decision we made when we first started is using that group. It's a little more expensive than your normal cost to have a CPA, but it's been well worth every penny.
Yeah. And that's very important. That's some key components of running a business, especially the financials. And after this, I may have to get with you, only because that's one thing. As for me, I've never found a CPA or an individual that works in that field that I can rely on, that I can truly trust in a way, but at the same time lead me down the right path to make sure that we don't make the wrong decisions. I mean, there's a difference between a CPA and a tax advisor, right? There's a lot of things that can take place as running a business, whether you're S Corp, whether you're LLC or whatever, that those tax breaks can be a benefit to you, of course. But if you don't know about them, if you don't have somebody telling you about them, what are you going to do?
Right. You can't, like I said, we're treating 40 hours a week. I can't be on the internet researching all the advantages of an S Corp and any loopholes or healthcare benefits or anything so we've had him in the background all these years. We meet with him every quarter, and he advises us on the way we go. Things that are new, laws that change, he's up to date, and he lets us know about it. And he says, hey, do you want to do this? Which, if he brings it up, it's probably always yes. That's the way we want to do it. So.
That's right. Yeah. And that's, for me, I'm a very personal person. I like to sit down, especially with a CPA, and I tell them up front, say, I'm very personal. When I come to you, it's one-on-one. We sit there and we go over the numbers. You tell me what I need to be doing doing wrong here, whatever.
Right.
I've yet to find that one individual that can do that for me. It drives me insane.
Well, yeah, like I said, he's in the beginning. It was probably it was a stretch. It was more expensive than normal, but it is paid off more than enough over the years.
Sure. No, that's good, man. So if somebody wanted to go into the physical therapy field practice, what would you suggest the path they take and some of the things they should look out for and kind of navigate around to make them, of course, go down the right path to be successful?
Yeah. I mean, I think, observation, it's like anything. You want to know exactly what they do. Spend a little time there. We have observers all the time. LaGrange High School, Troop, Callaway, LaGrange College, Point University, locally, Columbus State. There's always somebody in one of our clinics, hey, I think I want to be a PT, can I come shadow, for 8 hours or a couple weeks during the summer? And we always say yes, because, the longer I've been in it, some of that's come back to benefit us. We'll have somebody that'll come observe and, pretty quickly you can say, this person's probably not going to make it, or, hey, this person's pretty cool. Hey, why don't you work for us this summer? They work for us. Well, next thing you know, they're graduating PT school and they're calling me wanting a job. And that's an absolute yes. I mean, I've interviewed them for 3 months, 3 years ago and know what kind of person they are. So observe, shadow. You got to get your undergrad degree now to be a PT to go into your graduate school. So you need to have a little bit of a plan. I mean, you can major in history, but you got to take a lot of prereqs to get into PT school that probably don't involve a history major. So, I think I had a couple of history majors in my class, but they had to spend a year after their degree to go back and get some biologies and some things like that. So, you probably should major in something health related. I think Auburn's got a exercise science degree that you could take, and that leads you right into PT. I think they call that their pre-PT program or something like that. Kinesiology, some schools call it that. Biology, something something health related would get you there faster and easier without a bunch of extra classes. But I think observe, because again, not every physical therapist is the same in the setting, and then the settings are different. You know, some schools pre-COVID, they required you have different types of observation. Now that's been harder since COVID, so you can't go in nursing homes, you can't go home health physical therapists, you can't observe like you used to with that. But you know, I think you should try. You should try to get into a hospital and see what they do. Try to get into a rehab hospital and see what they do. Come to an outpatient clinic, see what they do. Come to a couple different outpatient clinics, because there's a wide variety in that. But
Sure.
I think if you really want to know that's what you want to do, you got to observe and make sure, see what they do on a day-to-day basis. You got to keep your grades up. At one time, the class numbers are limited in PT school, so I think UAB is like 35 a year. You know, so at one time it was harder to get into PT school than it was to get into medical school. You know, as they open up more and more medical schools, they have a lot more class numbers to fill. So, you know, you got to keep your grades up either way. But I think you should major in something health related. It's an easier path into graduate school.
Sure. I saw something on the news a few weeks ago. You know, of course, these colleges and universities or whatever do case studies on, you know, like careers. And they did a case study on what's the happiest career to work in. Guess which one was number one? Physical therapy.
Physical therapy, nice, nice, yeah. Well, it's cool. I mean, you know, you see somebody come in, they've had a motorcycle wreck, you know, young person, they busted up, plate screws everywhere, broken arm, broken ankle, you know, broken ribs, can barely walk. 6 months later, you know, you see them at the grocery store, and they look great, you know, and that's awesome to see somebody like that. Somebody, an athlete comes in, devastating knee injury, they have to miss their whole, you know, junior season of college soccer or whatever. You know, they come in, you know, they're nervous, they've never been hurt before, they've just had this big traumatic surgery. And as a physical therapist versus a doctor, we spend an hour with them every visit, 2 or 3 times a week, depending on that. You know, a doctor you see for what, 3 minutes at the most, you know, so you become friends with a lot of these people. And so then you see them 2 or 3 months later, and they're running, they're jumping again. That's pretty rewarding in our field. You know, we've got a character coming in right now. I mean, she's probably 82, 83. I mean, she got down in a wheelchair, got lazy, and hurt to get up, stopped getting up. Her family goes, look, you're becoming a burden to us, and you're happy. She's sharp as a tack, right? So they like, we got to get you into therapy. So they told their family physician. He sent her over. You know, we got her up walking around the clinic now. She's doing a little dance the other day. It's fun to see somebody come in. She could barely stand up 3 months ago, and now she's showing some moves that she hadn't put out in, you know, 20 years. So it's pretty neat.
Yeah, you know, that's rewarding. It really is. And, you know, of course, we do the marketing for you. And for us, and like, again, my mom passed away, but for what we do to reach out to those individuals that are in need of physical therapy. Last time we were into your clinic over here doing some social media content, and it might be the same lady you're talking about.
Probably.
Yeah, she, you know, we did a client interview testimonial with her, and she was telling us about that. But man, I tell you, I told Jenna that when we left, you know, of course it was like a week after my mom passed, 2 weeks after she passed, I got a little emotional just because for what we do to reach those individuals that are in need and just desperately want a physical therapist, and to provide that contact for them to you, it really touches my heart, man. To know that they're on the right path to get healed and live a better life.
Yeah.
So going back to the question earlier about what somebody could do to go into that field, how long would you recommend they work in as a therapist before opening up a business or practice?
Oh, that's a tricky question. I had a feeling in school, you know, I had this nagging thought that, you know, hey, one day I would like to be a business owner, but that didn't guide my thoughts in the direction when I'm looking at jobs, right? You know, the job I took and then declined was for a big hospital system. This job was more where I wanted to be, more of a private practice, smaller with 6 or 7 clinics. I definitely don't think business ownership is for everybody. No. And I don't think it's for every physical therapist by far. I mean, I think you have to have that, the heart of an entrepreneur. You know, I think you got to be a good physical therapist too. I mean, that's one thing. My goal was to, in school, my main goal, my main thought, when I started PT school, I had a leg up on most of my classmates as an athletic trainer, right? Just the knowledge, the background of rehab, anatomy, special tests, modalities, all these things in our world, I already knew all that stuff. So my goal was to be the guy that you come to when you've seen some other people and they can't figure out, right? Or they can't make you better. And so that was always my goal. And, I've become kind of the shoulder baseball guy, elbow guy around here. I mean, guys from Atlanta go up, they get sent to Atlanta, they got shoulder problems. Well, they come back to Josh in LaGrange, and that's awesome. That's, I love that. But so I think you've got to specialize or really be good at your craft, and then, look to be a business owner. I mean, if you want to be a business owner, I think you need to work, and the same thing with a specialty. If you want to be an orthopedic specialist, then your job needs to be in an orthopedic clinic, right? If you want to be a pelvic floor therapist at some point, then you need to go work somewhere where there's a pelvic floor therapist where you can learn from before you go take classes or your continuing education. So if you want to be a business owner, maybe you should go work for a small practice and see how they do it and let them know. I mean, there might be an opportunity for you to buy in and start a clinic under their eye, their watch, where they have a background to help you. I've seen some physical therapists that I know try to start their own business, and it's not, they're not in business anymore. You got to have a little bit of a background. You got to do some research. We bought an existing practice, so we kind of have a template to run off of. That 6 months when I was trying to talk Lori into buying the business, I was paying attention to everything. Every admin meeting we had, every email they would send about monthly numbers and data. I was paying attention to that. I was trying to learn how to run reports out of our system on who was our referral source and, all those kind of things. So I was learning as much as I can in a practice that we then turned around and, we were able to mimic. Now,
Sure.
We've changed and grown and done things differently immediately, but it's different. We were a small one-person, 3 therapist clinic versus a company that had 7 or 8 clinics and, 30 therapists. So things change on your size and volume, but then now as we've grown up to 14, 15 therapists, we've had to change our model, HR, all those kind of things as we've gone. But work in a facility or in a place that you want to do. Even once you've become a therapist, work somewhere that you want to model. If you just want to be a corporate person and work yourself up the chain, then go work for a corporate physical therapy place, right? Be a clinic director, then be a regional manager, and then, just work up the chain that way. But if you want to be an owner, go somewhere in a private practice that's successful and see what they do.
Sure, absolutely. And like you said, man, business ownership and entrepreneurship, not for everybody.
No.
It is. I tell you, I started this business, I started on my own 2015, 2016. I can't tell you how many times my wife has had to talk me off the cliff, because I just said, I'm done. I said, no, you're not. This is your dream. It's what you've always wanted to do. It's what you're going to keep doing.
Yeah.
So,
well, I Lori Jeter's been my business partner since 2009, and we have had, I think, the best working relationship you could have. I don't think in 13, 14 years we've had one argument about anything to do with the business. I mean, she's talked me off a cliff a few times. She's usually been more the steady hand. I'll get excited and have some ideas and want to kind of take off, and she'll bring me back down to reality, and let's do this a little slower and make sure we do it right. So it's been a great partnership that we've had all these years, and I think that's helped us. If you start out solo, you're all on your own. If you've got a business partner, then you've got 2 of you that are able to tackle things and handle things. And so I think that's been a big help with us and owning our own business too.
Yeah, and partnerships are, like you said, you got to have, it's yin and yang.
The right partner.
You gotta mesh together. I mean, we'll talk about this later on. But yeah, if it don't mesh and it ain't right, it ain't right.
Yeah.
And it's a lot more headache and heartache than you really want to go down that path, having a partner, if it ain't the right partner.
Yeah, we've got a third partner now that has worked out great. A few years ago, we offered a partnership to somebody that I am so glad it fell through, because it would have been a headache from day one till, it probably would have ended somehow, but that would have been a bad decision. But yeah, you got to have the right partner. I've seen businesses fail because of
Right.
conflict and partners not agreeing on which way to move forward.
There's a lot of
successful businesses.
Yeah, it's a lot of sleepless nights
Yeah.
when you don't have that right individual. But I mean, it's a support system, and when it comes to a partnership, you both got to mesh together. You both got to support each other. If one ain't on the right same road you're on, you go in two different directions. Well, it's guaranteed it's gonna fail.
That's
probably.
right. That's
So
correct.
yeah, so that's good, man. What's your why? Why do you do what you do? Why does Josh does what he does in physical therapy?
We've talked about it earlier. I still like physical therapy. I mean, I like when people get better. As you guys have seen doing our marketing stuff, I mean, I started out sports medicine, ACL stuff, rotator cuff repair, baseball players. Over the years, I've honed my skills into what we call spine. So spinal manipulation, manual techniques, dry needling. My wheelhouse now, it just makes me so happy when I see a 30 to 50-year-old, I'm going to say female, but it can be a male. They come in, they say, my neck's been hurting for 6 weeks or 6 months, and it kind of radiates down my arm a little bit. I mean, I can, more than likely, I can crack their neck, stick some needles in there. In 2 visits, they are going to be pain-free where they've been hurting for 6 weeks to 6 months. I mean, that's pretty fun to do, The watching people get better, people come in, they have a big rotator cuff surgery. Again, they're 3 months in a sling, or they're just, they get depressed about that. But then as we move them through it, we talk them off a cliff. They had a sleepless night. They're hurting. We give them ideas. We show them things that they can do to help with those things, and they get better and they move forward. I mean, that's still the why. Now, don't get me wrong. I love owning a business. I have, grown into loving that. Being an entrepreneur, running that, it has been great, and I love that part too. But in the end, I still like being a physical therapist. I don't want to ever get to a point where I'm doing only administrative and not actually practicing.
That's right.
I mean, I'm probably 50-50 now, but I want to have clinic days always.
Yeah, and that's the thing with running a business and doing what you love. If you don't love what you do, truly love it, running that business, it's just going to be a heartache for you, and it's probably just going to put you into an early grave because you're just going to work yourself to death and never be happy one day in your life.
Right.
You got to honestly love what you do as a business owner, and helping people especially overall.
Yeah.
It's very rewarding, really is.
My wife has had, she didn't know what she wanted to do in college. She graduated, didn't know what she wanted to do. She's finally found a path now where she's happy. But we're further out from college than that. I've always liked what I do. I mean, even in athletic training, I love being an athletic trainer. I like being a PT. So going to work has never been, the work. I've got to be there at 8. I had a long night before. Those kind of things. But I love doing physical therapy. So it's not like I've ever hated my job, which is a plus, and that helps. And that bleeds over into the business side too. So when you get a headache with HR and insurance, I mean, that's the headache part. The physical therapy part is almost kind of like a relief from that.
That's right.
So.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. So I got a few questions to ask you other than the ones we've already talked about.
All right.
What are some books that you've read in the past or currently reading that you would recommend to somebody that's wanting to go down your path?
We'd have to look it up. He owned the 76ers, Philadelphia 76ers. Pat, he had a really bushy red goatee. We can edit this and look at his name, but I can't remember. He wrote a book. He was a physical therapist, but then the business side, he made money somewhere else. But his book was about his path into physical therapy and part of that, and I love that book. I read that book a few years ago. Let me think. I don't know. I have to think about that.
Yeah.
Physical therapy. Is that what it's called? Yeah. What's his name? Pat something, right? No, that's not him. I can see the cover of the book now, but
I'm horrible with book names.
Yeah.
I've got 4 here sitting around the room. I don't even know the names of them.
Yeah. I'd have to.
Well, they're really good books.
Yeah. Let me think. I've never been a super big reader. I read like 1 book a year.
I used to hate reading, man. I did, but about 6 years ago, I got into reading, that's my relaxation.
Yeah.
It's got to be a book I love, of course.
Yeah.
You know, entrepreneur book, a business book, or something that's always trying to advance, you know, educate me more. But I just love reading. It's relaxing. 2-minute shout out. Who would you like to give credit to for leading you down the path you are and who you become?
Well, in the business world, you know, again, Lori Jeter, my business partner, that's been amazing. That's one of the best, you know, career decisions I've ever made. Again, it took me a second to talk her into it, but we, you know, when she got turned on and decided she was going to do it, she was all in, you know, and it's been great ever since. David McCrary is the business consultant that I've talked about. I mean, you know, if any big question ever comes up, Lori and I are talking about it, it usually ends with, I'll shoot David an email. You know, let's call David next week and see what he says about this. You know, my family, my wife, Katie, she's always been there supporting us, moving forward, helping me grow that while we also grew a family, you know, so that's been pretty awesome. My parents did well. My mom worked at the hospital in Valley, Alabama. My dad was a coach at a small private school, so, you know, they're nice, middle-class folks, but they never had a lot of money, and they put me through school. You know, I paid for my tuition in graduate school, but I always had a car, always had a phone, always had rent that they took care of the whole time. You know, so that made it possible for me to do that. You know, I worked a lot in college, undergrad and graduate school, but, you know, without their backing, I wouldn't have been able to do all that. So
That's good, man. Well, I know we got to wrap up soon because you got a hard stop here shortly to go to the clinic, but I really have enjoyed sitting down with you, man.
Yeah.
Learned a lot. It's good. Really have enjoyed you.
My first official podcast.
Oh, yeah?
So, in the books.
Yeah, that's good. Now you'll do many more of them. But yeah, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for just sitting down with us and sharing your story, man.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. But thank you all listeners for joining the Unfiltered Business Podcast. And as always, just share, like the channel as much as you can, share as much as you can. That's how we grow and reach the viewers we want to reach. And as always, stay humble, stay focused, and be confident.